The world didn't end with a whimper. It ended with the screech of rubber on wet asphalt and the sickening crunch of metal tearing through ancient pine. The Land Rover, 2 tons of British steel, became a projectile. Inside, gravity ceased to exist. For Eleanor Vance, the next 5 seconds stretched into an eternity of violence. The horizon flipped, sky, mud, tree, sky, mud, until the final, bone-shattering impact brought the chaos to a sudden, ringing halt. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the hiss of a ruptured radiator and the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the rain hammering against the undercarriage. They were upside down. The smell of petrol began to mix with the metallic tang of blood and the damp rot of the Peak District floor. But to understand why Ellie was left to bleed in that silence, we have to go back 4 hours. We have to go back to the warmth, the champagne, and the lie that was the Vance family. 4 hours earlier, the air in the private dining room of the Kensington smelled of roasted lamb and expensive perfume. It was a good smell, the smell of success. Ellie sat at the head of the table, her cheeks flushed, a first-class honors degree in biomedical engineering resting on the crisp white tablecloth next to her plate. She was 22, brilliant, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she had finally done enough to earn her place at this table. To the genius of the family, Uncle Gavin roared, raising a glass of red wine that was dangerously close to spilling over the rim. He was sweating, his face flushed a deep, unhealthy crimson. First class from Imperial. Brains and beauty. She certainly didn't get the brains from you, did she, Rob? Robert Vance, Ellie's father, forced a tight smile. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous tic Ellie had noticed getting worse over the last year. She worked hard, Gavin. We're very proud, aren't we, Sarah? Sarah Vance, Ellie's mother, looked up from her phone where she had been frantically texting under the table. She snapped into her role, the doting mother. Incredibly proud. It's a pity the tuition fees were so astronomical. But, well, it's an investment, isn't it? You'll be landing a high-paying job soon, won't you, Ellie? Maybe something in the city. I'm looking into research, Mum, Ellie said, taking a sip of water. Prosthetics design. It's not about the money, it's about. It's always about the money. Love, Gavin interrupted, draining his glass and immediately signaling the waiter for another bottle. Everything is about money. Ask your dad. How's the logistics firm holding up? Rob? Still bleeding cash. The table went quiet. The tension that had been humming in the background suddenly spiked. Ellie looked between her parents. She knew things were tight. They had downsized the house in Surrey, sold the holiday cottage in Cornwall. But she didn't know it was bad enough to be discussed in front of the waiters. Business is fine, Gavin, Robert snapped, his voice low. Let's focus on Ellie, shall we? I'm just saying, Gavin slurred, pointing a finger at Ellie. You're the golden ticket now. Kiddo, don't waste that big brain on charity work. We need a winner in this family. As the dinner wore on, the celebration felt less like a party and more like a wake. Gavin kept drinking, whiskey after the wine, then a brandy. Robert and Sarah drank to keep up with him, their laughter becoming shrill and forced. By the time the bill came, Gavin snatched it up with a theatrical flourish, waving his black credit card. My treat, he announced. The Vances might be cash poor, but we have style. Ellie watched him punch in his PIN code, fail, and punch it in again. Uncle Gavin, she said softly, maybe we should call a cab? It's pouring outside, and the drive back north it's long. Gavin laughed, a harsh, barking sound. A cab? To the Peak District? Do I look like I'm made of gold? We took the Land Rover. It's built for this. Besides, I'm fine. I drive better with a bit of fuel in the tank. Ellie looked at her father. Dad, he can't drive. Look at him. Robert rubbed his temples. It's late, Ellie. The trains aren't running properly because of the storm. Gavin knows the car. He'll be fine. We'll take it slow. I can drive, Ellie offered, though she hated driving the massive SUV. You're not insured on it, her mother cut in sharply. And if you scratch it, we can't afford the excess. Just get in the car, Eleanor. Don't ruin the night. Don't ruin the night. That was the family motto. Keep the appearance up, no matter the cost. So, Ellie got in the car. She climbed into the back seat, behind the driver, buckling her seatbelt tight across her chest. She watched the rain streak against the window as London faded into the M1, and eventually, the winding, treacherous darkness of the Snake Pass. The atmosphere in the car was suffocating. The heating was blasted too high to combat the freezing November rain. Gavin was driving aggressively, tailgating lorries until they moved, then accelerating past them with a roar of the engine. "Gavin, slow down," Robert said from the passenger seat, gripping the handle above the door. "The visibility is nil." "I'm doing 50. Rob, relax," Gavin spat back, his eyes glued to the road but his reaction times visibly delayed. "This car can't handle it. It's a tank." "It's a winding road, Gavin," Ellie shouted from the back, fear finally breaking through her obedience. "Please, just pull over. I feel sick." "Stop whining, Ellie," her mother said from the seat next to her, though her own face was pale. "You're making him nervous." "I'm not nervous," Gavin yelled, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. "I'm in control." Then, the headlights caught the reflection of eyes. A sheep, maybe a deer, standing in the middle of the black tarmac. It was a split-second decision made by a brain swimming in alcohol. Instead of braking in a straight line, Gavin wrenched the wheel hard to the left. The tires lost grip. The heavy SUV hydroplaned. "Gavin!" Robert screamed. The world tilted. The car hit the soft mud of the shoulder and tripped. It rolled. Once. Twice. The sound was deafening, glass exploding, metal screaming against stone, the terrifying crunch of the roof collapsing. Ellie felt a sharp, blinding pain in her leg, and then her head slammed against the side pillar. Darkness. When Ellie opened her eyes, the world was upside down. The roof of the car was crushed in, inches from her nose. She was dangling in her seatbelt, the pressure on her chest immense. There was a terrible, throbbing heat in her right leg. She tried to move it, and a scream tore from her throat that sounded animalistic. Her leg was pinned tight between the crumpled front seat and the buckled chassis of the door. "Mom," she choked out. The taste of copper filled her mouth. "Dad!" There was movement in the front. A groan. Then, the sound of a seatbelt clicking open. Uncle Gavin dropped to the ceiling of the car, which was now the floor, with a heavy thud. He groaned, clutching his shoulder. "Rob!" Gavin whispered, panic rising in his voice. "Sarah!" I'm here." Her father's voice came from the darkness. He sounded winded, but alive. "Sarah!" "I'm okay," her mother whimpered. "My arm. I think it's broken. But I'm out. I'm out of the belt." They were moving. They were scrambling toward the shattered window where the rain was pouring in. "Help me," Ellie gasped, the pain in her leg making her vision swim. "I'm stuck. Dad, I'm stuck." The movement stopped. "Ellie." Her father's face appeared in the gap between the seats. He was upside down, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Are you okay? Can you move?" "My leg," she sobbed. "It's crushed. I can't feel my foot. Get me out. Please, Daddy, get me out." Gavin was already outside. Ellie could hear his boots squelching in the mud. He was pacing, frantically. "Oh God. Oh God. Look at the car. It's a write-off. Total write-off." "Gavin, shut up about the car," Robert yelled, kicking the door open further and crawling out into the rain. He reached back in, helping Sarah drag herself out of the wreckage. They were all out, all three of them, standing in the freezing rain, illuminated by the one remaining headlight that was pointing uselessly into the trees. "Get Ellie," Sarah cried, holding her arm. "Rob, get her out." Robert leaned back into the twisted metal carcass. He grabbed Ellie's arms. "Okay, sweetie, on 3. I'm going to pull. You have to push. It hurts." Ellie screamed. 1, 2, 3. He pulled. Ellie screamed again, a sound so raw it silenced the wind. The metal didn't budge. Her leg was vice-gripped by the frame. "Stop! Stop! You're breaking it." Robert recoiled, his face pale in the dim light. He backed out of the car. "I can't moving it. The seat. The frame is bent right onto her shin. We need the fire brigade. We need the jaws of life. Police, Gavin said. The word hung in the air like a curse. Robert turned to his brother. Call them. Now. I can't, Gavin said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. Rob, I can't call them. What are you talking about? Ellie is trapped. I'm 3 times over the limit, Rob. Gavin hissed, grabbing his brother by the lapels of his ruined suit jacket. If the police come here and breathalyze me, I'm done. Prison. Years. And the insurance? They won't pay a penny. Not for the car, not for the medical bills. Nothing. It's a clause. DUI negates the policy. I don't care about the policy. Robert shouted, though he didn't pull away. Don't you? Gavin countered, his eyes wide and desperate. You told me at dinner you are 3 months behind on the mortgage. You told me the business is underwater. If this payout doesn't happen, if I go to jail and you get sued for the damages, you're destitute, Rob. You lose the house. You lose everything. Inside the car, Ellie listened. The pain was blinding, but the words were cutting through the fog. They were talking about money. They were standing in the rain, 10 feet away from where she was bleeding, talking about mortgages. Dad, she called out, her voice weaker now. Please. It's cold. What are you saying, Gavin? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. We walk away, Gavin said. We walk up to the road. We say I swerved to miss a lorry that came into my lane. We say we all got out. We say Ellie was confused. She wandered off in the dark while we were checking the damage. Leave her. Sarah gasped. We can't leave her. We're not leaving her to die. Gavin insisted. We walk to the nearest village. We call 999 from there. It buys me an hour. My blood alcohol drops. We say we got separated in the panic. They find her. They cut her out. She's fine. But we save the payout. We save ourselves. Silence. The kind of silence that weighs 1,000 tons. Ellie held her breath. Say no, she prayed. Daddy, say no. How far is the village? Robert asked. The question broke Ellie's heart before the cold ever touched it. A mile. Maybe 2, Gavin said. Come on. We have to go now before a passing car sees us. Dad! Ellie screamed. Dad, don't you dare. Don't you dare leave me. Robert looked back at the wreck. He couldn't see her face in the shadows, only her hand reaching out, fingers splayed against the mud-streaked window. He looked at his wife. Sarah was crying, but she turned her head away. She turned her back on the car. I'm sorry, Ellie, Robert whispered, though she couldn't hear him over the rain. We'll send help. Just hang on. Let's go, Gavin urged. And then, the impossible happened. The footsteps squelched in the mud, moving away. Fading. No. Ellie shrieked, thrashing against the seat belt, ignoring the agony in her leg. Come back. Mom. Dad. Please. She listened as their voices grew fainter. She listened as they scrambled up the embankment to the road. She listened until the only sound left was the rain and the terrifying, lonely creaking of the dying car. She was alone. Before we continue, if you are watching this from the comfort of your home, safe and warm, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring these stories to light. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from right now? Because for Eleanor Vance, her location was about to become a living hell. Time became a fluid, malicious thing. In the darkness of the ravine, minutes stretched into hours, distorted by pain and the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the undercarriage of the overturned Land Rover. Ellie had stopped screaming. Her throat was raw, stripped of its lining by the force of her earlier pleas, and besides, there was no one to hear her. The only witness to her slow death was the ancient forest of the Peak District, indifferent and cold. She was freezing. The cold wasn't just on her skin. It was inside her, a creeping numbness that started in her fingertips and was slowly working its way toward her heart. Hypothermia. Her biomedical training, the very thing her uncle had toasted to just hours ago, began to analyze her own demise with terrifying clinical detachment. Stage 1, shivering. Stage 2, confusion. Stage 3, organ failure. She was somewhere between 1 and 2. She tried to shift her weight, but the agony in her right leg flared white-hot, causing her vision to tunnel. The metal of the seat frame had acted like a guillotine, not severing the limb but crushing it against the door pillar. She reached down, her fingers slick with rain and blood, and felt the jagged tear in her jeans. It was wet. Warm and wet. Arterial bleed? No, too slow. Venous. But steady. If the cold didn't kill her, the blood loss would. Think, Eleanor, she whispered, her teeth chattering so hard she bit her tongue. Think. She fumbled at her neck. Her graduation scarf. It was silk, expensive, a gift from her mother that morning. You look so professional, darling. She yanked it loose. With trembling hands, she looped it around her thigh, high up near the hip, above the crush injury. She pulled it tight. Tighter. She gritted her teeth and screamed a silent, airless scream as the pressure cut off the circulation. She tied the knot. It was messy, but it would hold. Then came the waiting. The silence was the worst part. It gave her space to think, and the only thoughts that came were of the retreating footsteps. Dad didn't fight him. Mom turned her back. She replayed the scene over and over. Uncle Gavin's desperate, sweaty face talking about insurance clauses. Her father's resignation. They had weighed her life against a mortgage payment, and the mortgage had won. "They're coming back," she whispered to the darkness, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. "They went to get help. They didn't leave me." But deeper down, she knew. She had seen the footprints in the mud leading away. An hour passed. Then, too, the rain turned to sleet, tapping a frantic code on the metal. Ellie's consciousness began to drift. She saw herself back at the restaurant, but the wine in Gavin's glass was blood, and the waiter was wearing a surgeon's mask. She saw her mother texting, but the phone was melting in her hands. "Wake up, Ellie," she commanded herself. Her head lolled forward. "Don't sleep." Suddenly, light. It wasn't the soft glow of a rescue team. It was harsh, sweeping beams cutting through the fog high above on the road. The rumble of a heavy engine. A lorry. The gears ground as it navigated the hairpin turn where Gavin had lost control. Ellie tried to shout, but her voice was a broken croak. She reached for the horn, but the steering wheel was crushed into the dashboard, out of reach. She grabbed a piece of shattered plastic from the door panel and slammed it against the window frame. Clack, clack, clack. It was a pathetic sound, swallowed by the wind. The lights of the lorry swept past. The engine roared as the driver shifted up, preparing to accelerate out of the turn. He was leaving, just like them. "No," she sobbed, the tears freezing on her cheeks. "Please, see me." Up on the Snake Pass, Ewan McAllister was tired. He had been hauling timber from the Scottish Highlands down to Manchester for 10 hours straight. His eyes were gritty, and his thermos of coffee was long empty. He knew this road. He knew it was a widowmaker. He kept his eyes on the white lines, the wipers of his Scania truck fighting a losing battle against the sleet. He had passed the turn. He was accelerating, but something nagged at him. A glint, just a flicker in his peripheral vision as his headlights had swept over the edge of the ravine. It could have been a wet rock. It could have been a discarded soda can. But the skid marks on the tarmac were fresh. Ewan swore softly in Gaelic. He checked his mirrors. The road was empty behind him. He slammed on the brakes, the massive truck hissing as it came to a halt. He threw it into reverse, backing up slowly until his cab was aligned with the broken section of the dry stone wall. He grabbed his heavy maglite torch and popped the door. The wind nearly ripped it off its hinges. He stepped out, the cold biting through his flannel shirt instantly. He walked to the edge and shone the beam down into the abyss. Nothing but trees and darkness. "Hello," he shouted, his voice booming. "Is anyone down there?" Silence. He was about to turn back. He had a schedule to keep, after all, when he saw it. The reflection of a single, red tail light, deep in the brush, angled toward the sky. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," Ewan breathed. He didn't think. He didn't call 999 immediately because reception was spotty up here and he needed to know what he was dealing with. He scrambled down the embankment, sliding on the mud, ripping his trousers on brambles. He fell, picked himself up, and kept moving toward the wreckage. When he reached the Land Rover, the smell of petrol was overpowering. He shone the torch into the shattered window. Two eyes stayed back at him, wide, terrified, and glassy with shock. "Help!" Ellie whispered. It was barely a breath. Ewan dropped to his knees in the mud. He reached through the broken glass and took her hand. His hand was rough, calloused, and covered in engine grease. But to Ellie, it felt like the hand of God. "I've got you, lass," Ewan said, his voice thick with a Scottish brogue that sounded like warmth itself. "I've got you. Don't you move." "They left me," Ellie said, her mind firing random synapses. "The mortgage." "Hush now," Ewan said, pulling out his phone. One bar of signal. He dialed 999. Emergency. I'm on the Snake Pass, mile marker 4. Vehicle off the road. One female trapped. She's conscious, but she's in a bad way. Send the fire brigade. Send everyone." He hung up and looked back at her. He saw the scarf tied around her leg. He saw the unnatural angle of the limb. He saw the blue tinge of her lips. "You're a smart one, aren't you?" he said, nodding at the tourniquet. "Did that yourself." "Biomedical engineer," Ellie slurred. "Is that right?" "Well, Miss Engineer, my name is Ewan, and I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I'm staying right here." He realized she was shivering violently. Without hesitation, Ewan stripped off his heavy, waterproof high-visibility coat. He reached through the window, struggling to maneuver in the tight space, and tucked it around her chest and shoulders. He was left in just his shirt in the freezing sleet, but he didn't flinch. "There," he said. "That's a bit better, eh?" "You're cold," Ellie whispered. "I'm Scottish, love. We don't feel the cold. We just get angrier." He held her hand through the window for 40 minutes. He talked to her incessantly to keep her from drifting into the dark. He told her about his daughter in Glasgow. He told her about his dog, a useless greyhound named Turbo. He told her bad jokes that made her wince. Why did the scarecrow win an award? Ewan asked, squeezing her hand when he felt her grip loosen. "Stay with me, Ellie. Why did he win?" "I don't know." "Because he was outstanding in his field." Ellie tried to smile, but her face felt like a mask. "That's terrible." "I know. I have worse ones. Stay awake and I'll tell you." When the blue lights finally flashed on the road above, turning the rain into a kaleidoscope of cobalt, Ewan let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a lifetime. The firefighters descended with ropes and cutters, their voices loud and professional. "Step back. Mate, we've got it from here," a fire chief said, placing a hand on Ewan's wet shoulder. Ewan didn't want to let go of her hand. "She's scared," he said. "Her name is Ellie. We'll take care of Ellie. You go get warmed up in the ambulance." As they began to cut the roof off the car, the screech of the hydraulic cutters louder than the thunder, Ellie's eyes sought out Ewan. He was standing back, shivering now, watching over her like a guardian spirit. The last thing she remembered before the pain medication from the paramedics pulled her under was Ewan giving her a thumbs up, and the thought that a stranger had given her more love in 40 minutes than her own father had in 20 years. The waking was not gentle. It was a violent surge of light and sound. The beep, beep, beep of monitors. The hiss of oxygen. The smell of antiseptic that burned the nose. Ellie blinked, her eyelids feeling like sandpaper. She was in a white room. Her leg was elevated, encased in a cage of metal pins and plaster. Her chest felt heavy. "She's waking up." A voice. Her mother's voice. Ellie flinched. The memory crashed into her. The rain, the leaving, the silence. Sarah Vance rushed into her field of vision. She looked immaculate. Hair done. Makeup perfect, though her eyes were red-rimmed. She grabbed Ellie's hand, the same hand Ewan had held. Ellie tried to pull it away, but she was too weak. "Oh, thank God," Sarah cried, tears spilling over. "Oh, my baby. We were so worried. We thought we lost you." Ellie stared at her. The audacity of it took her breath away. "You," she rasped, her voice dry and crackling. "You left." Sarah froze. She leaned in closer, her grip on Ellie's hand tightening, turning from comforting to controlling. She lowered her voice, her eyes darting to the open door where a nurse was passing. "Ellie, darling, you're confused," Sarah whispered intensely. You have a concussion. The doctors said your memory would be jumbled. We got separated. It was dark. We screamed for you. But the wind, we couldn't find you. We went to get help. Liar, Ellie hissed. Gavin, the insurance. Sarah's face hardened. The mask slipped for just a second, revealing the panic underneath. Listen to me. Gavin is distraught. He's been here every day. We all have. Don't say things you don't mean. You've been through a trauma. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Where is he? Ellie asked, her heart rate monitor picking up speed. Beep, beep, beep. Is outside speaking to the police, Sarah said. They just want to clear up the report. It was an accident, Ellie. A terrible accident. Another car ran us off the road. You remember that, don't you? The headlights coming at us. Ellie closed her eyes. They were doing it. They were building the lie. And she was trapped in this bed, broken and drugged, while they spun a web around her. I remember, Ellie said softly. Sarah exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Good. Good girl. I knew you would. I remember. Ellie opened her eyes, staring straight into her mother's soul. That you walked away. Sarah recoiled as if slapped. At that moment, a man in a suit walked in. He held a clipboard. Detective Inspector Miller. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Mrs. Vance, the detective said politely. Could you give us a moment? I need to take Eleanor's statement now that she's awake. Sarah hesitated. She looked at Ellie, a silent, desperate warning in her eyes. Don't ruin us. Of course, Sarah said, smoothing her dress. She's very confused, detective. Just go easy on her. Sarah walked out. The detective closed the door. He pulled up a chair and sat down. He didn't speak for a long moment. He just looked at Ellie, studying her face, her vitals, the fear in her eyes. So, Eleanor, Miller said, opening his notebook. Your uncle says a phantom car ran you off the road. Your mother says you wandered off in a daze. But the lorry driver who found you, Ewan, he says you were trapped, pinned tight, says there's no way you could have walked a step, let alone wandered off. Miller leaned in. I'm inclined to believe the lorry driver. Want to tell me what really happened on the Snake Pass? The silence in the hospital room was heavy, thick with the weight of a life-altering decision. Detective Inspector Miller sat with his pen hovering over the notebook, his face unreadable, waiting. Ellie looked at the door where her mother had just exited. She thought about the Christmas dinners, the holidays in Cornwall, the tuition fees they had paid. She thought about the obligation children are taught to feel toward their parents. But then she felt the phantom pressure of the car crushing her leg. She heard the rain. She heard the footsteps walking away. She heard the word mortgage. They didn't get lost, Ellie said, her voice trembling but gaining strength with every syllable. My uncle was drunk. 3 times the limit, maybe more. He was speeding. He lost control. Miller began to write, the scratch of the pen loud in the room. And after the crash, I was conscious, Ellie continued, tears finally spilling over, hot and angry. I was pinned. I begged them to help me. My father, he tried to pull me out, but I was stuck. Then Gavin, my uncle, said if the police came, the insurance wouldn't pay because of the alcohol. He said they would lose everything. The house. The business. Miller stopped writing. He looked up, his expression hardening into something dangerous. They discussed the insurance payout. While you were trapped. Yes. They agreed to walk to the village to sober up and report it as a hit-and-run later. They left me there, detective. They left me to bleed so they wouldn't have to pay the excess. Miller closed his notebook with a snap. He stood up, and for the first time, he looked less like a bureaucrat and more like a predator who had just caught a scent. Thank you, Eleanor. We'll need to verify this with the timelines and the forensic evidence from the car. But let's just say their story about the mystery car was already full of holes. You rest now. I'm going to have a chat with your uncle. As Miller walked out, Ellie felt a strange sensation. It wasn't relief. It was the feeling of a bridge burning, the flames licking at her heels. She was an orphan now. She had orphaned herself. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. Gavin was arrested in the hospital waiting room. The shouting match between him and the officers echoed down the corridor. Her parents were questioned, their phones seized. When the police cross-referenced their GPS data, it confirmed everything. They had loitered in a pub car park 2 miles away for 4 to 5 minutes before calling 999. They didn't come to see her again. Instead, 3 days later, a letter arrived. It wasn't an apology. It was a legal notice from a family solicitor, informing her that she was no longer welcome at the family home and that her belongings would be put in storage. They were cutting her off before she could testify. Ellie spent 2 months in the hospital. The damage to her leg was catastrophic. Shattered tibia, severed nerves, muscle necrosis from a crush. The doctors saved the leg, but they told her she might never walk without a cane. "You're lucky to be alive," the surgeon told her. "Another hour out there in the cold, and the hypothermia would have stopped your heart. Whoever found you saved your life." Ewan. He came to visit every Tuesday. He looked out of place in the sterile, white ward, a giant of a man in flannel shirts and steel-toed boots, holding a Tesco bag full of grapes and magazines. "You look less like a ghost today," Ewan said one rainy afternoon, sitting in the plastic chair that groaned under his weight. "I feel like one," Ellie admitted. She was staring at her leg, encased in a metal fixator frame. "My parents, they are pleading not guilty to the neglect charges. They are saying I'm vindictive, that the head injury made me paranoid." Ewan peeled a tangerine, his thick fingers surprisingly gentle. Well, they can say the moon is made of haggis, doesn't make it true. I saw what I saw. I saw a girl left to die like roadkill, and I'll tell that to a judge." "Why?" Ellie asked, looking at him. "Why do you care? You don't know me." Ewan paused. He handed her a segment of the fruit. "Because, lassie, there's enough darkness in this world without us adding to it. You don't leave people behind. It's the first rule of the road." It was that simple kindness that fueled Ellie's rage. If a stranger could understand that, why couldn't her own father? If you're enjoying this story and want to see justice served, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us share Ellie's fight with the world. And don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss the ending of this one. 6 months later, Ellie was discharged. She moved into a small, ground-floor flat in East London, paid for by disability benefits while her case was pending. She was in constant pain. Every step was a battle. But she had a mission. She didn't just want them to go to jail. Prison was too easy. They cared about money. She would take the money. All of it. She hired Priyanka Roy. Priyanka was a legend in the London legal circuit, a tiny woman with terrifying intellect and a reputation for shredding insurance companies. They met in a cramped office filled with stacks of case files. "It's a difficult case for a civil suit," Priyanka said, scanning the medical notes. "The criminal charges against your uncle for dangerous driving will stick, but suing your parents for abandonment. It's hard to prove the intent to cause harm versus just panic." Ellie pulled a folder out of her bag. It wasn't legal documents. It was graphs, charts, calculations. "I'm a biomedical engineer," Ellie said, sliding the papers across the desk. "I did the math." Priyanka raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Ellie pointed to a timeline. "This is the rate of my blood loss based on the arterial pressure from the crush injury. This," she pointed to a jagged blue line, "is the temperature drop in the Peak District that night. And this is the necrosis rate of muscle tissue when deprived of oxygen." Ellie's voice was cold, clinical. She was dissecting her own trauma. "If they had called 999 immediately, I would have been in surgery within an hour. The muscle tissue would have been viable. I would have walked again properly. The delay, the specific duration of 6 hours that they waited, caused the permanent nerve damage. They didn't just leave me. Their decision to prioritize the insurance policy directly caused a quantifiable, permanent disability." Priyanka looked at the charts, then at Ellie. A slow smile spread across the barrister's face. "You can prove that." "I can model it," Ellie said. "I can show the jury exactly what happened to my body while my father was ordering a drink at the village pub to calm his nerves." Priyanka closed the folder. "Right. We're not just suing for negligence. We're suing for battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and fraud. We're going to ask for everything. The house, the cars, the pension funds." "Do it," Ellie said. The preparation for the trial was a war of attrition. The Vance family fought back dirty. Their lawyers dug into Ellie's past, trying to paint her as unstable, ungrateful, a troubled youth who had always had friction with her parents. They tried to offer a settlement, pound 50,000 to drop the civil case. The courtroom was silent enough to hear the hum of the ventilation system. All eyes were on Eleanor as she took the stand. She navigated the few steps to the witness box with her cane, the metal clicking rhythmically against the wood floor. It was a sound that commanded attention, a permanent, audible reminder of the night on Snake Pass. She sat down, arranging her damaged leg carefully, and looked out at the sea of faces. She didn't look at her parents. She looked at the jury. "Miss Vance," Priyanka Roy said, stepping forward, her black robes rustling. "Can you tell the court what you recall from the hours you spent trapped in the vehicle?" Ellie leaned into the microphone. "I recall the cold," she said, her voice steady, devoid of the trembling victimhood the defense had expected. "And I recall the math. The math. I lay there for 6 hours. As a biomedical engineer, I knew exactly what was happening to my body. I knew that when the crushed muscle tissue in my leg began to die from lack of oxygen, it would release myoglobin into my bloodstream. I knew that if I wasn't extricated within 4 hours, the nerve damage would be irreversible. I lay there, counting the minutes, knowing that every 60 seconds that passed was another percentage of function I would never get back." Priyanka nodded slowly. "And did you know why help hadn't arrived?" "Yes," Ellie said. She turned then, for the first time, locking eyes with her father. Robert flinched, looking down at his hands. "I knew because I heard them calculate the cost. My uncle said the insurance wouldn't pay out if he was caught driving drunk. My father said they couldn't afford to lose the house. They did a cost-benefit analysis. The asset, the house, was worth more than the liability, their daughter." A gasp rippled through the gallery. The defense barrister stood up, objecting loudly. "Objection. Speculation. The witness claims to know the minds of the defendants." "I don't need to know their minds," Ellie cut in, her voice rising over the barrister's. "I heard their words. They chose a mortgage over my life." The cross-examination was brutal, but Ellie was unshakable. When the defense suggested she was confused by the concussion, she recited the license plate of the car, the time on the dashboard clock, and the exact sequence of the crash. She was impenetrable, but the final nail in the coffin didn't come from Ellie. It came when Priyanka Roy called Sarah Vance to the stand. Sarah looked small in the witness box. She had aged 10 years in the last 6 months. She played the part of the grieving, confused mother perfectly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Mrs. Vance," Priyanka began softly, lulling her into a false sense of security. "You maintain that you went to get help immediately." "Yes," Sarah sobbed. "We ran. It was so dark. We were panicked. And you didn't have your phone." I dropped it in the crash. I couldn't find it." Priyanka walked back to her table and picked up a piece of paper. It was a digital forensic report. "That's strange, because the data from the cell tower shows your phone was active. In fact, at 11:42 p.m., 20 minutes after the crash, while Eleanor was screaming for help, you sent a text message." Sarah went pale. The tears stopped instantly. I don't recall." Priyanka handed the paper to the usher to give to the witness. "Allow me to refresh your memory. You texted your husband, who was walking right next to you. You didn't want to speak out loud in case anyone was nearby. The text reads, 'Is the policy definitely fully comp? Check the app.'" The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. Priyanka leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried to the back of the room. "You weren't running for help, Mrs. Vance. You were checking the insurance app. You were securing your payout while your daughter bled into the mud." Sarah Vance didn't answer. She couldn't. She simply buried her face in her hands, and the sound of her husband groaning from the defense table told the jury everything they needed to know. The facade of the loving family didn't just crack. It shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up. He didn't look at the defendants. In the matter of Vance versus Vance et al., he read, "We find for the plaintiff on all counts. We find the defendants liable for negligence, battery, and fraudulent misrepresentation." The damages were read out. For medical expenses, £250,000. For loss of earnings, £500,000. For pain, suffering, and punitive damages, designed to punish the malice of the act, the jury awarded an additional £1.5 million. Total judgment, £2.25 million. It was a figure that meant total annihilation. The house in Surrey, the cars, the remaining assets of the logistics business, it was all gone. Uncle Gavin stood in the dock as the judge delivered the criminal sentencing. For causing serious injury by dangerous driving and perverting the course of justice, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was handcuffed immediately, led away without a backward glance at the brother he had dragged down with him. The court adjourned. The noise of the gallery erupted, reporters shouting questions, but Ellie didn't hear them. She sat still, feeling a strange lightness in her chest. The weight she had been carrying since that night on the pass was gone. She stood up, grabbed her cane, and walked toward the exit. Outside the courtroom, in the grand marble hallway, her parents were waiting. They looked like ghosts. Robert was leaning against the wall, tie undone. Sarah was weeping openly now, stripped of her dignity. When they saw Ellie, Robert pushed himself off the wall. He took a step toward her. "Ellie," he croaked. "Ellie, please. It's over. We've lost everything. The house. Where will we go?" Ellie stopped. She looked at the man who had taught her to ride a bike. She looked at the woman who had bought her the scarf she used as a tourniquet. She felt a phantom ache in her leg, but it was distant now. "You have each other," Ellie said, her voice calm. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? You protected the family unit. You protected the money. Now you have the consequences. We're your parents," Sarah pleaded, reaching out a trembling hand. "We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. We can start over." Ellie looked at the hand. She didn't take it. "No," Ellie said. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a calculation, and you miscalculated." She turned to walk away, but stopped and looked back one last time. "And don't worry about the rain tonight. I'm sure you'll find shelter. Just don't expect me to come looking for you." She walked out the heavy double doors into the London daylight. It was raining, a light, cleansing drizzle. But for the first time in a year, Ellie didn't feel cold. Waiting by the curb was a black taxi, and standing next to it, holding an umbrella, was Ewan. He grinned when he saw her, that same warm, rugged grin that had been her lifeline in the dark. "Fancy a lift, Miss Millionaire," he teased, opening the door. "Only if you're driving, Ewan," she smiled, a real, genuine smile. Well, I'm a better driver than that lot." He jerked his thumb toward the court. "Where to?" "Forward," Ellie said. "Just drive forward." 3 years later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony was small but spirited. The building was a renovated warehouse in North London, bright and airy, with large windows that let in the sun. The sign above the door read, "The Beacon Trust, Legal and Medical Advocacy for Survivors." Ellie stood at the podium. She didn't use a cane anymore, though she walked with a slight, dignified limp. She looked out at the small crowd, staff members, lawyers, and survivors of domestic trauma who had nowhere else to turn. She spotted Priyanka Roy in the front row, now a board member, and in the back, wearing a suit that was definitely uncomfortable but worn with pride, was Ewan McAllister, the trust director of logistics. "They say that trauma leaves a scar," Ellie spoke into the microphone. "And it does. But a scar is just a reminder that the skin is stronger than the wound that tried to open it. We are here today not because of what we lost, but because of what we refuse to leave behind." She paused, thinking of the dark ravine, the silence, and the choice she had made to survive. "We are the ones who walked out of the dark," she said, "and we are leaving the light on for anyone else trying to find their way home." The applause was loud and warm. Ellie stepped down, hugging Priyanka, then making her way to the back of the room. She embraced Ewan, burying her face in the rough wool of his jacket. "You did good, lass," Ewan whispered. "You did good." Her parents never reached out again. They had moved to a small rental in the Midlands, living on state pension, estranged from the society they had tried so desperately to impress. Ellie didn't hate them anymore. Hate required energy. She simply felt nothing, a void where they used to be, now filled with people who actually understood the meaning of the word family. As Ellie looked out the window at the bustling London street, she saw a young girl tripping on the pavement, scraping her knee. Her mother immediately swooped down, picking her up, checking the wound, kissing her forehead. The girl cried, and the mother held her tighter. Ellie watched them for a moment, a soft smile touching her lips. The cycle was broken, the debt was paid, and she was finally, truly, free. Thank you for reading Eleanor's story. It's a harsh reminder that sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed, they're sitting at the dinner table. But it's also a reminder that heroes can be found in the cab of a lorry on a rainy night. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us tell more stories like this. And if you believe in justice, leave a comment below saying justice for Ellie so we know you made it to the end. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, look out for each other, and goodbye for now.